From the South Point here in Las Vegas, Ron Flatter in for Brent until Monday when Brent will be back. Chuck Esposito here from Station Casinos. Amal Shah here as he always is. He's the one guy who didn't clock out, the one guy who soldiers on while everyone is on vacation. And a man who soldiers on too because he's an MVP. He's a three-time All-Star. He's a former Rookie of the Year. He's a World Series champion. And he's part of the VSiN family. Oh, and by the way, played with the Philadelphia Phillies, certainly an icon there, who will be talking about an icon to be potentially with Bryce Harper signing that 13-year deal. Let's call in our own Ryan Howard. Ryan, first of all, the simple question. What's your reaction to Bryce Harper landing in Philly?
I think it's great. I think it's great for Philly. I think it's great for Bryce Harper. And now everyone can stop wondering. He can get to it, and obviously you got to go through the little bit of the media circus, but now he can focus on getting back to playing baseball.
All right, so let's get back to betting on baseball too. The season win totals, pretty much everybody moved it to 89.5. Not a big move at the Westgate. They already figured Harper was going to land in Philly. Caesars, which opened its numbers much earlier than everyone else, didn't have that feeling at the point where they had the number at 86.5, goes to 89.5. So pretty much everybody at 89.5. What's your feeling about that number for Philadelphia in a very tough National League East?
I think that Bryce obviously brings something special to the table. The numbers you have right now, I think it's I don't think it fully falls on him. I think it's going to also come down to pitching. So you're going to have to see what the pitching staff is going to do. If the pitching staff can exceed expectations, then yeah, you can definitely go above and beyond.
Ryan, you mentioned. I'm sorry.
Mil, go ahead.
You mentioned the pitching staff. Obviously, Aaron Nola to me is already a top 10 pitcher, but Arrieta and Jared Eichhoff to me are the question marks in terms of how well they can perform. From what you've seen out of these two guys, what can the Phillies expect in 2019?
I think with Eichhoff, it's going to be a matter of him being able to stay healthy and just go out there and kind of do what he does. I had the pleasure of being able to play alongside of him and be there for his debut. And one of the things that I noticed about Ike was how incredibly poised he was. You would have thought that he had been in the big leagues for 5 years when he was on the mound. And that was something that just stuck out with me. I think for him, it's just being able to stay healthy. And I think he has enough poise to be able to go out there and get it done. I think Arrieta's a veteran guy. He knows what it's going to take for him to kind of get back up to par and go out there and try to execute.
Hey, Ryan, Chuck Esposito here. Question about the Phillies. I think as a young team and with the addition of Harper now, I think there's a lot more pressure on this team out of the gate. I know it's a very competitive division even before this move, but looking at the Philly fans who notoriously are unforgiven, you saw the way that Harper started last year. It was a very slow start. He had some problems. If he gets off to a slow start that way with the Philly fan base and that competitive division, how do you think it'll unfold early for the Phillies?
Well, you got 13 years, so you can't be getting upset with anybody for.
They're going to expect results day one. Believe me.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I trust me. I know what it was like playing there. So they're going to expect the expectations are going to be through the roof. Obviously, when you sign a contract like that, you understand. But I think too, one of the things with Bryce is that he's got thick skin, and I think he's got his expectations for himself and what he's going to go out there and try to go do, which hopefully that, as a player, hopefully that can match up with that of the expectations of the fans. But that's one of the things that when you start trying to play for the fans, you're doomed. You've just got to go out there. He's got to be Bryce himself. And I think that once, if there's going to be lulls. I don't care how good you are. I don't care how much money you make. You're going to have, good stretches and bad stretches. Everybody has it. It's just a matter of how quick can you get out of those bad stretches? And, yeah, he's going to get a taste of that in Philadelphia eventually. But, hopefully the fans will kind of cut him a little bit of slack early on and know and understand that, hey, this is a long-term relationship. So, people were shouting, hey, we want Bryce. Well, you got Bryce, so
right.
It's time to be nice.
I think too. I think you look at Harper and the role that he had with the Nationals. It's going to be a little bit different with the Phillies. I think being a young team the way they are, I think he's going to have to be not only a presence on the field, but in the clubhouse and off the field as well. I think it's a little bit different role for him as he gets a little bit older, just with the youth on that team moving forward. How do you feel about that for that role for Bryce, both on and off the field?
Yeah, he's the face of your franchise. He is the Philadelphia Phillies right now. I mean, you just gave him you're giving him $330 million. That's your guy. So, I mean, on the field, off the field, you want him to be, be that guy. So, in terms of him going out there and doing that, yeah, he's a leader. He's got to step up. He's got to be the leader on that team, or one of the leaders on that team. I also view Rhys Hoskins as a guy that's a leader on that team as well. But, everybody's going to look to Bryce. It's all going to come down to Bryce when it's the big game situations. Everybody's going to have their expectations again. And, Bryce is a guy that I don't think shies away from the big stage, from the big scene. Yes, this is a huge target. But at the same time, I think that Bryce is definitely one of those guys that says, all right, go ahead, put the target on me. Come and get it. He's one of those guys that welcomes that.
Ryan, as a former player, obviously you're ecstatic when players can get as much money as they possibly can get. But now as a businessman who's invested in a lot of different things, when you look at these types of deals, 10 years, 13 years, do you think sometimes, because we haven't seen so many of them play out successfully, that if you're an owner, if you're a GM, you might be a little bit hesitant to sign a guy for this many years or this much money?
Yeah, I would definitely think with the way that the game has kind of trended to the younger side, guys are coming up a lot earlier, 19, 20, 21, 22, and teams are trying to sign these guys a lot earlier than what, they were before. I mean, obviously you look at Albert's second contract with Anaheim, he signed when he was 31. Bryce is 26. Machado, 25, 26. So, those guys, obviously, you're hoping that, hey, we can get the peak and that this guy can continue to do great things towards the end of the contract. Well, yes, it hasn't panned out or played out a lot of the times that teams, the way teams have wanted them to. But, hey, that's part of the game, and that's the gamble you take for going with those kind of contracts.
And speaking of gamble, as we close here, what would you consider more likely? Bryce Harper at 6-1 to win the National League MVP, or the Phillies? And I don't know what the number is right now on them. Maybe Chuck can fill that in here in a moment. The Phillies to win the National League East.
Ooh, I would say I would probably take my chances more so right now with Harper winning the MVP.
Interesting. Okay.
Just from the standpoint of, again, you have some question marks with the pitching, and not just, with some of the either the starting pitching, but, some of the middle relief and getting the ball to Robertson at the end of the bullpen. So that's where, I would say I would have to go with Harper right now.
Okay, very good. Well, I'll tell you what, we're always going to go with you, and we're going to pick your brain as much as we can. We know you're with ESPN
Absolutely.
doing Baseball Tonight on Sundays, so we'll look forward to seeing you there and hearing you here. Ryan Howard, the former MVP, the former Philly, joining us here on VSiN. Thanks again, Ryan.
All right, appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Chuck,
Thanks, Ryan.
Do you have a number on that, or is it still moving?
I don't. It's still moving, but they are the favorite in the National League East right now. I think there's a better chance of them winning the East than Harper winning the MVP. In my opinion, I just think the MVP race is super competitive. I think in the East, with his addition, it's kind of pushed them over the top. As Amal said earlier, health's a big thing. I think you look at the Braves and some of the injuries they've had. You look at the Mets pitching staff and the injuries they've had to DeGrom and Syndergaard over the last couple of years. I make the Phillies the favorite in the National League East.
First of all, kudos to Josh Towers, because he said last March in 2018 that Bryce Harper is going to wind up in Philadelphia. He called that one a long time ago. And the second thing is, Ron, I'm just not as high, and I get where Chuck is coming from, but I'm just not as high on Philadelphia as maybe everyone else is. I thought the Braves were impressive last year. I think when you look at the addition of Corbin, obviously with Strasburg, if he can stay healthy, Strasburg should probably have about 3 stints on the DL. That's his average, it seems like, every year. And, of course, my guy Max Scherzer, best pitcher in baseball for my money. To me, when you look at those three guys, you look at the lineup, I think Juan Soto, the kid at third base, Anthony Rendon, I think this is still a pretty dangerous Washington team. Eaton should be healthy. Trey Turner had a good year. This is going to be a competitive National League East. I think this should be a lot of fun this year in the NL East.
The Mets also have to stay healthy for a change.
They definitely do. I think especially with pitching. I know we've talked about how competitive the National League East is, but I really think the National League Central is just as competitive. I think when you look at the Cardinals, Cubs, and Brewers, with what the Cardinals did in the offseason with Goldschmidt and some of the other moves, they've shored up some of their young pitchers. If they stay healthy too, I still like that Brewer team. The Cubs didn't do a whole lot. I still worry about their pitching a little bit. I think those three teams at the National League Central are going to be super competitive.
I'm a little bit higher on the Cubs pitching than most people. To me, John Lester is a Hall of Famer. I think he's one of the more underrated pitchers of all time. You got Cole Hamels. This is a guy who's won a World Series MVP. We talked about Ryan Howard. He knows Cole Hamels extremely well. And, now Yu Darvish falls in as your number 3 starter. They need to worry about the bullpen. That's going to be their biggest concern, but I still think the Cubs are dangerous. To me, the Mets, though, are the wild card here. Ron, their offense can't be any worse than it was last year. And so now if they can get a semblance of some offense, this team is going to be very dangerous.
All right. I think that, I'm sorry, but I think the Cubs, when you say their bullpen is a question mark, their bullpen is more than a question mark.
Fair enough.
I think their bullpen could become their Achilles heel. I think they should have done more in the offseason to help solidify that bullpen a little bit. I think it's a real weakness right now, and I think they're going to be a team that at the trade deadline is going to be looking to shore up that back end.